There's a suit on and there's places to go.
Hey, Kujin. Yeah, so I was just basically telling you like the difference between optimism and pessimism. And with optimism, or your basic resting state as a human being is good-natured, a benevolent flow between humanity and nature, man and woman working together, and sort of all this. It's basically a harmony, and then these bad things come and disrupt that harmony. And so the bad things in life, the problems in life, whatever, they kind of subtract from that basic essence of life, which is good. And then Schopenhauer's formulation of pessimism is basically, no, the essence of life is strife, want, boredom, all these things. And the good things you encounter, they basically make you forget that resting level of pain and anxiety and anguish that we're always in. I don't know if it's anxiety is really with Schopenhauer, but later it would be. And I mean, obviously you can look at it a variety of different ways. Like Nietzsche would actually say that, like, yeah, that is true. Totally true. It's just all suffering and like pain. And he's like, isn't it awesome? That's like that's his whole deal. It's like, you have to like say, yeah, life is like utter suffering and pain. And you have to like affirm it and be like, this is fucking awesome, dude. You go and say, yeah, it's really, because he's like German. All the German guys are not going to lie to you and say that like life is good. And he'd be like, yeah, it's awful, dude. Isn't this great? And that's what you have to do. You have to, as terrible things are happening to you, you have to say, the world as it is right now, I accept it. All the terrible things, all the strife, all this whatever, yes, I accept it as it is.
Yeah, the acceptance is the only way through, man. That's just how it is. And strangely enough, I feel like there's a connection here with our album of the episode. There's something here, because we are, you want to, go ahead and drop it on us, what we're going to be talking about today.
We're talking about PJ Harvey's Rid of Me, which is her second album, I believe.
Her second album. Now, not to get ahead of myself, but I will say this: PJ Harvey is one of those artists like Mark Linkous of Sparkle Horse, whom I always knew about and always heard a lot about, because she was always a favorite artist of a lot of my favorite artists. But I think I tried once back in like the early 2000s, and I just, my musical brain wasn't able to understand what she was doing. I was just kind of bored with it. I didn't try very hard. But she's always sort of been flitting around the periphery and sort of tempting me with like curiosity, and I up until this point, I've always just sort of shirked that curiosity and been like, But to make 2 points connect, what the thing that I sort of realized when listening to this album is that there's a lot of weird shit going on with her. Her music made me feel like this strong sort of like fuck you, like almost a pessimist's aura, if you will. There's a lot of interesting, like uncomfortable things that she uses in her music that at least just on my few listens of this first album that I've ever tried to listen to, that was what I took away from it, of this someone who is just like kind of just unloading all of the fucking shit that she's been holding on to, and it comes out as like really raw and really subversive almost, and like very complicated listen, man. Like the walls didn't have anything to grab onto. I was like, I don't even know what to fucking think. But then the more I listened to it a few times, and it's pretty fucking great, man.
It's interesting too, because I was thinking, I listened to it twice getting ready for the episode, and I was thinking about it in terms of how it fits with the Riot Girl, that particular type of American feminist kind of thing that was going on, which I'm not super familiar with. We did the whole one, and then we also got the Sheryl Crow one, and now PJ Harvey. I mean, we're hitting a lot of women artists, and it's a lot, and they're all sort of coming at the female perspective, or presenting the female perspective from different angles. I realized just the second listen of the PJ Harvey, I was like, keep in mind, this is myself, I was like, this was recorded by Steve Albini in like the early 90s. And Steve Albini, I mean, it's not, I'm not besmirching the dead, but I mean, there was a kind of a misogynistic thing around him and that Chicago scene at the time. So for her to be working with him in a level where you get the vibe that he really took her seriously in a way he probably didn't take like Kathleen Hanna or a lot of the other sort of American Riot Girl sort of bands seriously. You have to imagine for him to be like taking it seriously and trying to capture it in a way that's like a proto in utero sort of production style. I mean, she really was not just throwing caution to the wind, but like she was just like hitting really hard. The album, I think, hits. When it hits really hard. It transcends gender in that respect.
I listened to it twice too. The listens were broken up into halves, so I've been listening to it for like a good week, and I've been cycling back to certain songs. And again, I know I kind of alluded to this before, but my first time through, I was confused because I knew that it was good, but I just didn't know if I liked it. But I knew it was good. I was like, this is some high level shit that's happening right now. I just don't know if it's for me. But then, and I was wondering, I'm wondering what it'll sound like on my second listen. And then sure enough, dude, that second listen was it just needed a little bit of familiarity, because it was so intense, dude. Like what she does is fucking crazy. And I finally got it that second time through. I was like, okay, I get it now. And it didn't take much to lock in, but once it did, I was like, this artist is a badass,
Yeah, and I really think too that going to also the Sparkle Horse thing, where we talked about how certain of those songs like Hammering the Cramps and Rainmaker and things like that, they're captured like really raw and in also a rustic sort of way. So it sounds almost like a punk band playing in a barn or something. Like, I really think that on this album, I really think that's just her and her drummer and her bass player, like live. And it's like there's so many things on the album that could be just punched up, but it's so stripped down and it's ragged and they're musically like really tight. That was the thing when I don't even know how I got into her or how I got into this album, but I remember like liking it a lot a long time ago, like in my 20s. And I remember one of the things really taking away from it was the fact that like her and the band, which is just a three-piece, they're so tight, dude. They're so just on point, and they're messing around with like weird kind of timing stuff and on certain songs. And if they wanted to make it a big powerhouse sort of album, it could have been like that. Like they could have really punched it up. Like it's the Butch Vig Rick Rubin thing, and I think we would say that Steve Albini falls into the Rick Rubin vibe more. He's just trying to capture the sort of the sound of the band, and even more so, than Rick Rubin, just letting things go. You could imagine this if it had been given the Butch Vig treatment, where everything is just cranked up and there's all the overdubs and all that stuff. It would have been, it could have been, some of the tunes could have been huge, but it's not. And having this more stripped down production style, it really accentuates what you're saying, which is that really the crazy sort of intensity of what she's doing musically and vocally.
Yeah, there's a darkness to it, man. There's a darkness to it that got even me a little spooked. I was like, man, is this above my head? Like, am I not musically able to grasp what's going on? Let's do a quick timeline like we do just to sort of make it all work. So, 89, 90, she's doing and I guess this album, Rid of Me, was the last time she recorded with a tree. Like she was like the PJ Harvey trio, I guess.
Yeah, there was the album before, I want to say, is Dry. I haven't heard it.
They did Dry, and then they did Albini. They did this album, Rid of Me, with Albini, but then after that, she went solo and kind of went the more produced route afterward. But
that was the one, To Bring You My Love.
Yeah. That was like 93. That's the one is that the one with
Little
radio?
Fish, Big Fish.
yeah. Now that album, that song is incredible. I remember that in high school being like, this song is so weird. Is she still, I don't even know if she's still making music. Is she still putting albums out?
She just played, I want to say like the Hollywood Bowl or something, like just a little while back. She's still out there playing, and she has made albums, but I have to say, dude, I haven't found anything compelling since, or that I've tried listening to since that To Bring You My Love. Like, to me, it really is like Rid of Me and To Bring You My Love are like the two, and I'd have to hear Dry and check it out, but these two albums I really think are like super solid. Rid of Me I kind of favor a little bit more because it packs a more succinct punch, but the stuff that I've heard since, it's kind of like it faltered, but I'd have to revisit it to say for sure.
I noticed when listening to it just the heavy influence. I mean, I guess it's not that heavy on the album, but you can just hear the blues seeping through with a lot of the stuff that she does. There was even a couple of tracks I was like, it's almost like kind of got a weird rockabilly feel to it, man. Like some weird, like just the way that she does some of the her guitar work and stuff.
There's a song on there, I'm looking at is it Me Jane? Because it's got that Bo Diddley.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking. Yeah, exactly. There was a specific song that kind of snapped me out of my like, oh, I don't know if I like this. Was what's it called? The Man-Size Sextet, where she's backed by those fucking strings and shit.
Yeah,
I heard that, and I heard that, and I just kind of went, what the fuck is going on? From that on, I was like, okay, I guess fucking killing it, man. I don't know. It was bizarre.
It's interesting because it's like, so the album starts with Rid of Me, and it's got that subdued thing. It's it's like we were talking about the quiet loud thing. Rid of Me, there's these aspects. It's not doing necessarily the quiet loud. She does this thing where it starts kind of quiet, and then the song gets to its sort of roar, and then it kind of maintains a roar. I think that the sort of where the album really picks up is Rub Till It Bleeds. I think that just kills, dude. That riff and her vocal delivery, it's just like that swinging riff, and the way her vocals are just going, it's just this swinging like pendulum of like rage. And so Rub Till It Bleeds, Hook, the Man-Size Sextet is kind of this little break, and then I think it just really just like blows up on the Highway 61 Revisited, which is the Dylan tune, and then 50-Foot Queenie, which was the single off the album.
Yeah, 50-Foot Queenie and Yuri G were the two songs that grabbed me. That was my sweet spot. We brought up Sparkle Horse, so I'll bring him up one more time. It's interesting. There's gonna be a dissection here, and I'm gonna cross-reference Sparkle Horse with his sort of.
Well, she was friends with Mark Linkous, and she sang on a few songs on "It's a Wonderful Life," the third Sparkle Horse album.
Ah, there you go.
Your dissection is warranted, Cooch.
If we take Sparkle Horse and then we take Sheryl Crow, I think it's interesting because with Sparkle Horse, there's this sort of simplistic, melodic thing happening where all the pieces by themselves are very simple, put together in a specific way that's very unique to him, right? Mm-hmm. It's still very melodic. With Sheryl Crow, I even felt like she's kind of doing it from the opposite side of the spectrum, where it's not necessarily simple music, but she's coming at it with all of her eggs are in the vocal melodic basket. Like that's her bread and butter, is really being able to get that vocal melody to kind of worm her way into your brain. And with PJ Harvey, I felt everything that she's doing is very complicated. They're doing polyrhythms. Her vocal melodies are not traditional or conventional at all. They're very dark. The instrumentation is very cruddy and grody and fucking just like gnarly. I bring these three artists up because I feel like they make this weird triumvirate of opposites, but they all sort of achieve the same thing. Like I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because she sort of shares that primitivism with Sparkle Horse, but then she also has that sort of layered complexity with her vocal melodies with like Sheryl Crow.
Yeah, she has that appeal without necessarily being conventional at all.
And also another thing with them, I mean, with Sheryl Crow, you could say certain things on certain albums. You could be like, okay, there's kind of a Stonesy or a Stevie Nicks kind of thing going on here or whatever. But especially with like Mark Linkous and with PJ Harvey, now that what you were saying is it's really sui generis. Like you really don't know what influenced this album for her. Like you just imagine that the bands that she was listening to that kind of molded her sound are like bands that you've never heard of before. Right. And you might not even be able to find back when this came out. You know what I'm saying? Like you really don't know what influenced this. And kind of similar with like Sparkle Horse. And that's a really good mark of individuality for the artist, because you're like, this kind of came out of nowhere, dude. Like really, it's like listening to it a couple times today. I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't know what the antecedents for this are. I mean, there's a Dylan song, and she's kind of like taking like the Dylan thing and just making it like more savage than Dylan could have. Dylan, in a lot of ways, when he's really good, especially this earlier period of Dylan, what I'm going to say, and this is subjective, he's sort of like unleashing this Old Testament biblical sort of like rage and wrath, or it's a rage and wrath that's of biblical sort of proportions that you find in like the Old Testament. And when she's doing like Highway 61 Revisited, that's what she's like tapping into, is that same sense, you know, like the way she sings like, you know, 1,000 telephones that won't ring, you won't get rid of these things. Like it's like these things like that are like sort of dragging you down, these material things that are like sort of like clinging to you, the material world that sort of clings to you and kind of like drags you down into like the morass of humanity and suffering. You know, it's just, and it's an apocalyptic song. So it's like she's really tapped into a lot of like rage and cacophony and apocalyptic sort of tendencies. And Dylan's early period seems to be a really good template for that to a certain extent. But then there's other things on the album that you're like, this came out before In Utero, didn't it?
In 92, which was, and I know In Utero was out, I think 93.
Production-wise, it's fitting that template. I mean, obviously, In Utero had to be, when they took it to Scott Litt to go and juice it a bit, that's what they did. But I assume, because I have that 1-2 disc set where it's got the Albini mixes, I only listened to it once. But I assume that Kurt was probably going for this sound, right, when he's getting Albini. Don't you think that like when he's thinking about getting Albini to record the follow-up to Nevermind, which is supposed to really like be a slap in the face or like, you know, a bucket of cold water in people's faces, don't you think that this is sort of the sound that he wanted to emulate or tap into?
Absolutely. And I know, and I heard that he kind of got his mixes for this album kind of got dragged a little bit, which seems to be a recurring theme for his work with these bigger artists. I didn't know when I first listened to it that Albini had mixed it. Once I found that out, I just thought it was really well done. I mean, it's got this weird cacophonous gothic sound to it almost.
Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from, and I don't know what he did, but it really works with them, with this band. It really, really worked. I thought he did a fantastic job. Where do you think she sits in sort of the pantheon of 90s artists? Because she's this sort of weird mythical creature that's like that kind of popped above the surface with that one song, the Little Fish Big Fish song. But then after that, she didn't have any radio hits to my knowledge after that, at least any that were as memorable as that one. I'm pretty sure she was just kind of like flying under the radar after that, which isn't a knock on her by any means, but she was still able to not necessarily have an exorbitant amount of commercial success in a time when the record labels still sort of relied on that.
I think she fits in with a kind of something that was going on with female artists in the 90s. I think she's, in some ways, her situation is analogous to Tori Amos.
But Tori Amos had that Under the Pink album was huge. That album was like, she had a couple of hits off. I mean, that was just like...
But then what happened after that? That's
fair, but I still feel like Tori Amos had a moment that felt larger than life, and it encapsulated more than just one song. PJ Harvey didn't have that kind of visibility, I don't think, to my knowledge, but I wasn't necessarily paying attention. I was also in love with a girl in my freshman year who was obsessed with Tori Amos, so maybe that was it. Maybe I was just more exposed to her then, but I just remember Under the Pink being like this huge thing.
I think the album Little Earthquakes has quiet all these years. I think that's the album before Under the Pink. And then Under the Pink has, we'll have to talk about Under the Pink. We'll have to do an episode on that. But yeah, it's Cornflake Girl and As God. I mean, those are the two big songs, right?
Yeah.
And Cornflake Girl is just like, I kind of hate to like take a song by an artist that is like their really big hit, and then also use that song to like sing their praises. But like, I mean, that song, it really is out of nowhere, and it's really amazingly good. It's really amazingly catchy, but it's catchy as it's very unique, you know? It's both super catchy, and it's also like really unconventional in a lot of respects. And it's got great performance. Like her singing on that is so good. And I think that the thing with PJ Harvey is it's like this album had 50 Foot Queenie, which was like what you would call like 120 minutes type hit. Like it had a video and it was getting a certain amount of airplay. I want to say that To Bring You My Love came out like 94 or 95, like late 94 maybe. But it came out, I think it was like closer to like end of 94, early 95. And the thing I remember reading interviews with her where she was sort of couching it in terms of like how she like sort of being interested in older screen idol actresses and stuff, and then sort of talking about how she's kind of playing this persona who's kind of like glammed up and also sort of like deluding themselves as they're sort of glammed up. But I mean, in hindsight, I think it was sort of like she realized that she had a moment where she had a certain amount of success, and now it was time for her to make the album that was going to, you know, get her the hit. And she basically did it. And I think that the wardrobe and kind of the self-satire in the process of getting that hit across, and it wasn't as big as like Tori Amos, but it was like the thing that got her on radio, got her in a lot of places. And Natalie Merchant, similar to that Tiger Lily album, that was bigger than both of them. You know, and that Tiger Lily album by Natalie Merchant, I actually have it. I think that's actually a really good album. But same with her, after that album, she never had anything close to as big as anything on that. Sheryl Crow is actually kind of the exception, because she is actually the person who My Favorite Mistake, that's a hit, and she's like, and I'm going to have a hit on the next album. There's going to be a hit on the album after that. She has a hit on like every album. She does it like she's like a machine like that. But I think there's something about like a lot of the other female artists, Natalie Merchant, Tori Amos, PJ Harvey, they have to push really hard to get that hit, and then for whatever reason they'll get their audience, but they never get that next big hit. But yet they're not one hit wonders the way like Candlebox or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? They're not one hit wonders, but they do hit this point where they hit the home run and they clear the bases, but then like the game gets rained out. I don't know how, whatever metaphor you can apply, but you know what I'm saying? It's like it kind of stalls after this really big album for them, and I don't know why it is. Well, and I think that's an indicative thing of the 90s female artists.
Oh, so you think that's like a recurring thing? I mean, maybe there's some, in the 90s, there was still a fight for legitimacy. I'm not saying it's much better now, but you know, back then that they were still kind of fighting the good fight with trying to legitimize female artists as their own thing, and they were kind of coming into their own. But I feel like PJ Harvey, she probably got that hit, and I think it was maybe not forced, but you can tell on this Rid of Me album, she didn't got nothing to prove to anybody. And I think after she got that hit, in 95, she's probably like, yeah, that's good. I'm good. Now I'm just going to do what I want. Here, this hit is for you guys to just leave me the fuck alone so I can make my music. And whatever comes out now is just what's coming out. Fuck off. She seems like she's got a little chutzpah to her. You know what I mean?
I think that the thing with the 90s female artists is that I think that they have to work twice as hard. They'll get to the thing that's the hit, and then they have to work twice as hard to sort of maintain it. And because I think that at that time, and this goes all the way probably till the end of the 90s, I think that they have to work twice as hard, and they just don't have anybody kind of in the industry doing them any favors, really. And I think that's even true for Courtney Love to a certain extent, because I think that she really had to like marshal her forces to get that Celebrity Skin album, and she probably had enough foresight to sort of be like, yeah, this can't be duplicated. I'm not going to try it. Whereas I think with the others, like PJ Harvey, Tori Amos, whatever, they're like, this is what I do. I'm going to keep doing it no matter what. But I think it's a more of an uphill battle, or it was more of an uphill battle. It probably still, I mean, now it's an uphill battle for anybody who's playing like rock music or indie music or whatever. If not because of like the fact that the industry is dead, or the industry doesn't care, or like every time you go on Instagram, there's like a new band that you never heard of before that's got like 14,000 followers, and they're just like, whatever, dude. You know, it's like you're like, it's a sea of saturation. It's a totally different sense of futility that we're drowning in now than what it was then. Because like at least they had hits, or they could anticipate a song possibly getting on the radio. Now it's like, you're just like, well, I hope somebody in fucking Paraguay listens to my last album. And then sure enough, Spotify for Artists tells you, yes, you had like 3 plays in Paraguay. Great job.
Well, you brought up Courtney Love, and I'm not going to bring this up to bash Courtney, but I will say, as much as I do love to bash Courtney, there is a significant difference when I was listening to PJ Harvey, because, you know, there's all those people out there that they'll hear anybody talk bad about Courtney Love, and they'll be like, oh, you just sour grapes, you hate women and this and that. Her albums are awesome and the blah blah blah. And you know, if you like her albums, that's great. I'm not saying that they have zero artistic merit, but I will say that there is a significant difference when you put on Rid of Me and you listen to what's happening, whether you get it or not. Like I said, the first time I listened to it, I was like, I don't know if I get it, but what's going on here is something fucking crazy. Like this. It's like what you said in the Courtney Love episode. You brought up the fact that it didn't really sound like there was any North Star there creatively. Like there's no creative North Star. There's just templates to be sort of like doled out in order to get from A to B. But with PJ Harvey, there's a North Star. Whether or not you know what that North Star is beside the point, but there's something there. There's some sort of like burning coal that's fucking throwing this thing forward, and whether or not you get it, you can still spot how fucking talented musically she is.
Well, that's like true artistry, right? Because it's like 2 totally different analysis. I could say, yeah, I basically like the Celebrity Skin album. I didn't buy it or whatever, but yeah, it had like some good songs on it or whatever. And then I do like the PJ Harvey album, and I own it on CD, right? So that's a level of commitment. But then with the whole album, I'm like, yeah, because it's like she took this particular Fleetwood Mac template. The other things analogous to that, but the Fleetwood Mac template, and with the aid of Billy Corgan and whatever, they were able to craft these particular songs in that particular way and achieve that certain form. And because of like my type of mentality about that sort of thing is like, hey, good job. Like you made something that doesn't offend me. You imitated something well, and I will give you the treat because of that. Whereas with PJ Harvey, there isn't a mold for what you're doing, or you created the mold, and it's really compelling and good. It goes a flight of stairs above you did the form well. You know what I'm saying? You took the form and you did it in 3.5 minutes. Good. This is a different sort of thing. It's a new form that's crafted for this album by this artist, and hence that's why it's genius or artistry or whatever, the artistic spirit. That's why where we talk about the really legitimate thing. That's kind of what Kurt Cobain had. It's, Elliott Smith. There's antecedents possibly, especially with Elliott, but all those people, they really have their own unique thing. It can't be reduced to the things that influence them or particular pop song formulas or song formulas that they utilize. There's something else that's unique to them, and that makes it transcendent.
There's something to be said for the DNA of a creation as well. I don't know how to put it into words, but I'll do my best. And you can relate to this because you create music. And I think that you would agree with me when I say that there's a significant difference between listening to a song that somebody, and not to disparage anybody, if you're making music, that's great. I'm not saying that certain people have it more than others. If you're creating art, I think that's fantastic. But sometimes you can pour a passion or a feeling or just like your own blood into a piece of work, and you can hear those molecules flying around in the song when you're playing it. Sometimes you can just hear it. It's different. It's different. And I think to use the comparison of PJ Harvey and Hole, that's the difference to that, right? I mean, it's just like you listen to it and you go, this is something beyond. Obviously, I agree with everything that you said, but also just passing the smell test, you're just kind of like, man, I don't know what this is, but this feels different.
Do you ever have a thing when you're playing, especially if you're playing with the band, where you play certain songs and you have like these certain involuntary memories that aren't related to the song, but something about the song and the mechanics of you performing it brings you back to a very particular place and time in your life?
Yeah, musical time travel, man. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
I've had that. I remember, especially with Schoenberg, like there were certain songs we were playing and I would be almost teleported back to these sorts of moments in my youth. Not dramatic moments, but just sort of like, it's very Proustian, right? It's this involuntary sort of memory. And when you're talking about the DNA and the molecules flying around, it reminded me of that. And a lot of that music that is really powerful. There's stuff about Elliott Smith, and we talk about him a ton, but there's certain things, especially on that album with Single File.
Yeah, his self-titled album. Yeah.
It makes me think of times in my life before I even heard the album, but it almost makes me feel like I knew the album at that time. Like I'll hear Alphabet Town or Single File or something, and it'll remind me of some time when I was with my girlfriend when I was like 19. I didn't listen to Elliott Smith back then. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's just really strange how music does that thing where it really does transport you to these different places in your life, and it takes you back. And it's not just nostalgia, although you could reconcile nostalgia with it, but it has this transportive quality to it. The thing with the Courtney Love, like hearing Malibu or whatever, that's kind of just maybe purely a nostalgic thing. But I think a lot of the stuff that we're kind of talking about, where it's really artistically catching fire, then you are getting into this thing where it's really taking you back to these moments, these primal moments of your youth, your formation as an individual, that are not really dramatic moments, but they're there's a certain reassurance in that past. And that's what I think about with that. Even though this album, in a lot of ways, the things that it's talking about are not reassuring, but there's something about the gestalt, the overall import of it, that has that artistic power to take you to these other places in your life that you've been. And it has that Heideggerian, that sense of the mood that's really important too. I don't think that like when you're just doing the rote song formula, like the whole thing, I don't think you capture that sense of mood as well. as when you have that artistic spirit, that distillation of it.
You can't fool the muse either, man. I really feel like I feel like your intention when you're writing it comes through. The thing that you were describing so eloquently is one of the few things in life that I find keeps me firmly on the optimist side of the fence. We're talking about pessimist, optimist all the time. I think, and we've had that debate so much all the time, just over the years. But you find this music that ignites this thing inside of you, and it's almost like it turns you around. You don't, like, time doesn't exist anymore. Like, you're like, what did I find? Like, is this a nostalgia thing, or did I find this song, or did this song find me? Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, that's what it makes me like, and in the most purely positive way. I don't know how else to describe it, and I think you get my gist, though.
I do, and it's like, one of the best things that anyone has ever said to me, and it was something you said to me, and it was like, I don't know how long ago, but you were like, I was just kind of done playing music, and then you had me play that show at the cinema bar, and something, I think this is what you said, but you was like, something about playing that show, I think it was, that got you to be like, hey man, I want to keep doing this. I'm going to get back to doing this. And it's that thing that you're talking about where something inspires you musically, and then when you go and you create, you're trying to basically, you're not trying to stop time, but you're dismissing time as an issue. You're like, whatever, dude, whatever time or whatever. I mean, you have to go to work or whatever, but you have to do certain appointments, but the time of the song takes precedence, and capturing that sort of thing that is enchanting in the song that you can create. That's what's important. And I kind of feel that when you said that to me, and you have to tell me if that's what you said, I can't remember, but it was basically me unintentionally reawakening you to the idea of like getting back into writing songs again and performing again and that sort of thing.
By no means do I want to like make myself the focal point of this episode, but I will say this to your point. The one cool thing about that moment that you're describing is that usually I don't know how you feel about this, but I can speak for myself when I say that. Usually when I search back on sort of the paths that I've taken in my life, musical or non-musical, mostly creative though, I find that if I search back to the genesis of what brought me to where I was at or what made me go in a certain direction, I can always trace it back to moments that in those moments they were completely insignificant and they felt insignificant. They felt like these just tiny little throwaway moments that I accidentally chose right, or I accidentally chose the way that I chose, and it brought me to this place. And you can look back on that and you can see that and you go, wow, that's crazy that was such an important moment, but it didn't feel important. And that moment that you described was a gift to me, because that was the first time ever in my life where it wasn't necessarily the show itself. It was the moment that you posed to me. And I was fully aware of the weight of the moment. And it had never happened to me before. I remember you were like, no, you should just do it. And I was like, bro, I don't have a band. You're like, it's fine. I'm like, I don't have any songs. You're like, yeah, it's great. Just come on, just play a show. And I was like, I'm gonna have to call you back. And then I sat with it, and I remember sitting there before I called up Peter and Kenny to ask them to play. And I remember thinking, if you say no to this, that's it. This is it. This is the moment. So think about it and choose fucking wisely, dude. And one might posit that I put the worth onto that moment, but it felt like this weird awareness of like, wow, I've been given this gift by my friend. Now I actually have a choice, where that's not always the case. And I don't know, I feel like this seems kind of like a digression, but it feels kind of tied into what we're talking about here. This sort of like, this existential, almost supernatural feeling of like what it is to create and the substance that exists when you truly give yourself to something in a way that other people don't. And I don't know. I don't know what you think about that. I know you're a philosopher at heart, but you know, I don't really know. I don't know how woo-woo you like to get about stuff, but
I do. I do like to get that. And it's funny because when you're talking about it and then bringing it back to PJ Harvey, I remember her talking about like how when she had to like write, she basically, I think she lived in like England, but not like a more rural area. And there was kind of like this sort of like what you kind of call like a barn or a still, and she had some rehearsal stuff out there or whatever. And she would just basically be out there monastically working on the album and writing the songs. And it was like an unpleasant experience. It was like intense thing of just working through all these sort of emotions and just exercising as an exorcism of these emotions and feelings and stuff, you know? And yeah, so I think that there's that aspect that you're talking about, the kind of supernatural sense to it too. I obviously, with my little Proustian digression, I believe in that, or I'll sign off on that for sure. But then there's also the no, you know what? Actually, there's something about what you said though that I think that it speaks to me on a really deep level. There's these times that I kind of have sort of a song or a feeling of a song that's coming to me, and I feel that if I don't go and really do it, that I might be missing the train, you know, and the train might not come again, sort of. You know, yeah. It's like every bus could be the last bus out of town, you know? So yeah, that existential moment of like, yeah, like I have to do this, dude. Yeah, it's really important. And it's antithetical to the Courtney Love thing where it's like, yeah, you got to make this album. These are the guys that are going to help you get the right formulas to write the songs and whatever. You have these people that are providing this buffering system to allow you to work or whatever. This is different because it's all about forging your work in an environment we have working the jobs that we were talking about, like getting up at 5 a.m. to go to work and stuff. It's not conducive. No one that we're around, well, I mean, no one I'm around is playing music or anything. They work these jobs, dude. So it's like we're in environments that are not conducive to what we're doing. And yet there's this sense that like you have to like forge ahead with what you're doing artistically and create the songs and create the album and create the work that you feel compelled to create.
Yeah. You were talking before sort of about the cynics, Schopenhauer, and I don't really know too much about those guys, so I don't want to, you know, Nietzsche too and whatever. But you were discussing sort of the idea of to wrap it all into one big fucking burrito, bro. You were talking about how their argument was like, no, life is this fucking toil that gets the transmission gets interrupted by brief moments of respite and happiness.
Yeah, and for Schopenhauer, the most supreme form of art that dispels the basic unpleasantness of life is music.
Yeah, and it makes sense too, because it's exactly what I was going to say, which is I think that the only way for us, and I can't speak for anyone else, but for you and me, the only way that we're the weapons that we've been given to fight off that sort of grasping horror, desperate, that's just like pulling you down, is to sort of have the pressure valve of creating and making something. And I'll stand by it again. I'll say it one last time. When you create in a space like that, you're downloading some sort of DNA into that creation. Even if you're the only one that hears it, there's something in there that just, it's like a palpable, it's just this palpable thing that exists where it's like a stamp of authenticity almost. You know what I mean? Like you can just,
it's a seal.
Yeah. I don't really know where I was going with it, but it just like that. I guess it's nice to hear to you know, with PJ Harvey, it was nice to hear, like, I love hearing music where even if I don't get it at first, you can still listen to it and go, there's something here. This is fucking good.
That's true. Do you want to get to the homework?
Yeah, let's do it.
My homework assignment was 21st Century Blues by Ray, right? Raye. It was interesting to me because it was like, after I listened to it a couple times, I went and listened to some songs off her newer album. The newer album had more of a, I want to say more of a conventional Beyonce kind of feel to it that I sort of liked a little bit more. A few things so Ray is like, she's a British artist. So with the 21st Century Blues, I was like, well, I was kind of like, in a sense, like, I don't like Adele. So like, this gives me the ability to listen to something that's kind of like Adele, but not actually have to listen to Adele, that's kind of pleasant. But then it also has that kind of British thing of like, it's British. It's a British sort of appropriation of American dance and blues and R&B, which is very like off kilter and like these places it has this very sort of sophistic melodic sensibility to it. But then it also has these kind of things that are sort of like Americanisms, I guess, that are kind of strange too. I realized on like the second spin, I was like, people don't realize how much of an influence like Fiona Apple had on women R&B sort of vocalists, because there's things about the Ray album that reminded me of like Fiona Apple, totally different approach and style and songwriting, but there was things about it that reminded me of that kind of soul aspect that Fiona Apple had. So I'm going to say that the songwriting, I'm going to say was like an 8. The lyrics, I would say they're not really my thing, but I'll say 7.5. The production, it was like a 9, and the album construction, I'd say is like an 8. And overall, it's like a 7.5 for me. It's not an album that I'm going to go back to because it's not really my thing, but I did respect it, and I was very like intrigued and mesmerized at times with it. So and it made me think a lot. So that was cool, but it's not necessarily my thing. When it comes to like female pop stuff, I'm more of a Taylor Swift, Doja Cat guy, but I respect it.
My homework was the album Bright Penny by Liam Hayes.
I really want to hear this. This I'm excited to hear.
Well, I spent most of the time trying to figure out who the hell they reminded me of, and I couldn't figure it out. Because it's obviously got that like 70s style with the electric piano and
the horns.
And the horns, exactly. I couldn't put my finger on it the whole time. I'm like, it's not 70s Hall & Oates. It's more of like Steely Dan probably. Yeah, like in the, Seals and Croft. I don't know. I was pissed off because I couldn't find a comp for it. But it was nice, man. It was good. It was an easy listen, man. It was really easy to listen to. My favorite song was probably I Sing Silence.
Oh, that's a great one.
I would say the same thing about this one. This isn't something that I dislike. It's not necessarily something that I would listen to all the time, but it's good. It's like solid across the board. Like I don't really think there were any weaknesses. Songwriting was an 8. Lyrics maybe were the weakest. I don't know. It's not that they were bad. I nothing really popped to me, but I would say lyrics, 7.5. Production was a 9.5, 9.5, like really solid production. Album construction, 10 songs, under 40 minutes. I mean, that's speaking my language, I would give that an 8, 8.5 maybe. Overall, I'd give it a 7.5 too. I'll go with your score.
I like Liam Hayes, and he's a oddball, dude. Like he's only done like 3 or 4 albums. I think they're all really good, and he always runs out of money when he's making them. He's just like on Drag City, sort of.
I've never even heard of him.
He produced like a Palace Brothers album, and he's just an oddball guy. He's played like session work and stuff out in Chicago and stuff. But I just love his albums. Like he just comes and he just steps up and knocks out this album. Like, you know, like we're talking about form, and this is the antithesis of that Celebrity Skin thing, because you're kind of like, he's doing the sort of the genius thing, but it's got the sort of formulaic nature of you know, that's those 70s kind of tunes, but you're kind of like, yeah, but I can't put my finger on this, and it's not by committee. This is like, this dude did it, you know. And it's like, I really love when guys can go and be like, I'm gonna just put together like a 10-song knockout album. You're just gonna, no skips. I don't care if like 5 people are the only people listening to it in the world. It's just, you just want to put out a killer album, man. I love that. So
yeah, man. I mean, there's something interesting about someone that can make an album that sounds familiar but unique at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
I thought that encapsulated this one pretty well. It sounds like it's from the past, but it's still kind of got this modern relevance to it. I don't know.
All right, what's the homework for this week?
Well, you got one for me? You start while I think.
Okay, Giant Sand, that's the name of the band.
Okay.
And Shore of Enchantment.
1998. Got it. I'm going to give you Aldous Harding. The album is called Designer.
Got it.
Well, for Steve from the Happy Casualties, this is Nick from Petrov the Hero saying, forget about it, but don't forget about us.
See ya.
Why are you always the one who's out of step? Is there something the matter with you?